Sylvester Stallone hilariously destroys liberal TV host on live TV. His response shocked everyone. It was supposed to be just another routine television interview. The studio lights blazed, the cameras rolled, and millions of viewers across the country tuned in to watch what they expected to be a typical Hollywood conversation. But what they got instead was an unforgettable clash of ideologies, an unscripted, unfiltered moment that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Sylvester Stallone, the legendary action star, known for his roles in Rocky, Rambo, and The Expendables, had agreed to sit down for an exclusive interview with The Evening Perspective, a well-known political talk show hosted by the notoriously liberal and sharp-tongued journalist, Martin Holloway. Holloway had a reputation for grilling guests, often steering the conversation into political debates designed to put conservatives and moderates in an uncomfortable position. But this time, he underestimated his guest. The setup as the interview began, everything seemed normal. Holloway greeted Stallone with a charming yet slightly condescending smile. "So, Sylvester," he began, leaning forward in his chair, "you've been in this industry for decades. You've seen Hollywood change. Do you think Hollywood has evolved in a more progressive direction, or do you think it's stuck in the past?" Stallone, dressed in his signature leather jacket with a casual but confident demeanor, smirked. He knew exactly where this was going. "Well, Martin," he said in his unmistakable, gravelly voice, "Hollywood changes, sure. But sometimes it changes for the better, and sometimes it just gets lost in its own nonsense." Holloway's eyes gleamed. He saw an opening. "Nonsense? You mean like inclusivity, diversity, social progress?" Stallone chuckled. No. I mean when Hollywood stops telling great stories and starts worrying too much about checking boxes. People watch movies to be inspired, to escape, to connect. Not to be lectured. The audience murmured. Holloway shifted in his seat. He wasn't expecting Stallone to be so direct. "The clash, well, Sylvester," Holloway continued, trying to regain control. "Some people might say that your movies, like Rambo, glorify violence, toxic masculinity, and outdated ideals. How do you respond to that?" Stallone leaned back and smiled. "You ever seen Rambo, Martin?" Holloway hesitated. "Of course Good," Stallone interrupted. "Then you'd know Rambo was about a soldier abandoned by his country, a man dealing with PTSD. It wasn't about glorifying violence. It was about showing what happens when you ignore the people who served you. Maybe if politicians, on both sides, actually watched it instead of pretending to be outraged, they'd learn something." The audience erupted in applause. Holloway's smirk faltered. He wasn't expecting that response. The mic drop moment trying one last time to regain control, Holloway fired back. "But don't you think Hollywood needs to set an example? We have to move forward, not dwell on outdated ideals of heroism and masculinity. Isn't it time to let go of the past?" Stallone's smile widened. He leaned forward. "Let me tell you something, Martin. People love heroes. Not because they're perfect, not because they check some list of politically correct traits, but because they fight for something. You know what happens when you take away heroes? You get a world full of victims. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather be in a world where people stand up for themselves instead of just complaining." Silence. Then, boom! The crowd exploded with cheers. The sound guy had to lower the audience's mic levels because they were so loud. Holloway, clearly outmatched, forced a chuckle and muttered, "Well, that's certainly one way to look at it." But the damage was done. The moment went viral. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Twitter exploded with hashtags like #StalloneDestroys, #RamboWasRight, and #HollywoodWakeUp. Even celebrities chimed in, some praising Stallone's courage, others calling him outdated. And Stallone? He just laughed it off. "Hey," he later tweeted, "I've been punched in the face before. This was nothing." The aftermath, the media scrambled to respond. Some outlets praised Stallone for speaking his mind, while others tried to frame it as an out-of-touch rant. But the general public? They loved it. Stallone's words resonated with people who were tired of Hollywood's constant moralizing. The next day, Holloway's show saw a record drop in ratings. Meanwhile, Stallone's next movie saw a massive surge in pre-ticket sales. And as for Stallone himself, he just shrugged, grinned, and said, "It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." Classic. The morning after the explosive interview, the media world was in full meltdown mode. News anchors, entertainment blogs, and social media platforms couldn't stop talking about it. Stallone's words had struck a nerve. Some hailed him as a fearless truth-teller, while others accused him of being out of touch with modern values. The hashtag Stallone mic drop trended worldwide, with millions of views pouring in from YouTube clips, TikTok edits, and meme compilations. People on both sides of the political spectrum were debating whether Stallone was just old school, or if he had exposed something deeper about Hollywood's changing landscape. And then came Martin Holloway's response. The host's weak comeback, realizing how bad the interview made him look, Holloway went into damage control. The next night, on the Evening Perspective, he opened the show with a monologue. "Last night, we had Sylvester Stallone on, and let's just say it got heated," he said with an awkward chuckle. "But let's be honest, this isn't about Hollywood being too woke or too traditional. It's about progress. And if some people feel threatened by progress, maybe they need to take a step back and ask themselves why." His words were met with scattered applause from the studio audience. But online, people weren't buying it. The top comment on the show's official YouTube upload read, "Martin got KO'd so bad, he's still trying to convince himself he won." Another popular reply simply posted an image of Rocky knocking out Apollo Creed, with the caption, "R.I.P. Holloway's career." Hollywood reacts. The fallout didn't stop there. Hollywood insiders were now weighing in. Some celebrities rushed to distance themselves from Stallone's remarks, while others quietly supported him. Actor and activist Mark Reynolds tweeted, "Disappointed to see a legend like Stallone stuck in the past. Hollywood is about change, and we can't let outdated mindsets hold us back." Meanwhile, UFC star and actor Donald Cerrone chimed in, "Stallone just said what we've all been thinking. You can't replace great storytelling with politics and expect people to stay interested." Even Elon Musk got involved, tweeting a simple, cryptic, "Base Stallone." Stallone's response: no apologies. While the debate raged on, Stallone remained unfazed. A few days later, he appeared on a podcast with Joe Rogan to talk about the viral moment. "You know, Joe, it's funny," Stallone said, sipping from his coffee mug. "People keep asking if I regret what I said. Why would I? I told the truth. I've been in this business for 50 years, and I've seen it change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not so much. But if people don't like hearing that, well, too bad." Rogan laughed. "I think people forget that you're not just some actor. You wrote Rocky with $10 in your pocket. You fought for that movie to get made. You built your career from nothing. If anyone's got a right to speak his mind, it's you." The episode quickly became one of the most watched in the Joe Rogan Experience's history. People respected that Stallone wasn't backing down. And then, in classic Stallone fashion, he delivered one last knockout punch. At the end of the podcast, he looked straight into the camera and said, "Look, I love movies. I love storytelling. But if Hollywood forgets what makes movies great, people are going to stop watching. And when that happens, well, let's just say there won't be a sequel." The internet exploded. The final blow. Days later, Stallone made a surprise announcement. He was working on a new action film, one that was going to be the antidote to Hollywood's nonsense. The title? The Last Warrior. It was described as a gritty, back-to-basics action movie with no political messaging, no forced agendas, just a great story about a hero fighting against impossible odds. Within hours, pre-ticket sales shattered records. Hollywood execs scrambled to figure out what had just happened. Some called it a fluke. Others worried that Stallone had just exposed a growing audience craving authenticity over political correctness. And as for Martin Holloway, well, let's just say he wasn't invited to the red carpet premiere. The hype surrounding Stallone's interview refused to die down. Every news outlet, podcast, and social media influencer had something to say about it. Some called it the moment Hollywood finally got a reality check. Others desperately tried to spin the narrative, claiming Stallone was just bitter or out of touch. But the truth was undeniable. People were listening. And then came the ultimate showdown. The final debate, a challenge accepted a week after the now legendary interview, Martin Holloway's producers reached out to Stallone's team with a bold proposition. Come back on the show for a rematch. Let's have a real debate. It was a desperate move. Holloway's ratings had plummeted since the interview, and his credibility was in free fall. He needed a second chance to regain control. Most celebrities would have declined. Most would have taken the victory and walked away. But Stallone? He saw an opportunity. He agreed. The stage is set on the night of the rematch. The anticipation was unreal. Every major network covered it. Bars hosted watch parties. Even Vegas started taking bets on how badly Stallone would KO Holloway this time. As the cameras went live, Holloway sat in his chair, visibly nervous, but trying to maintain his composure. Stallone walked onto the set, greeted by an audience that erupted into applause. Unlike last time, where it was a controlled studio crowd, this time, it was live, with real people in attendance. Holloway forced a smile. Sylvester, welcome back. I see the internet has been having quite the time with our last chat. Stallone smirked. Yeah, well, I guess people like the truth. The audience cheered. Holloway sighed and leaned in. Let's cut to it. You think Hollywood's too focused on political messaging, but don't you think movies should reflect the changing world? Shouldn't they evolve? Stallone nodded. Of course, movies should evolve. But evolution means getting better, not weaker. People don't want lectures. They want great stories. You tell a great story, and it doesn't matter who's in it, people will connect. The crowd applauded again. Holloway tried another angle. But don't you think you're feeding into a certain demographic? People who are afraid of change? Stallone chuckled. You know what people are afraid of, Martin? Losing what makes movies great. Look at what happened when they tried to take away action heroes. When they replaced real characters with cardboard cutouts. Ticket sales dropped. People checked out. Hollywood forgot its own golden rule. Entertain first. Message second. Boom. The audience lost it. Holloway was running out of ammo. But some say you're just clinging to the past. Stallone leaned forward. The past had something the present is missing. Heart. People don't love Rocky because he's a perfect guy. They love him because he struggles. Because he fights for something real. Hollywood forgot that struggle is what makes heroes, not just casting someone to fill a quota. The moment the words left his mouth, the crowd erupted louder than ever before. And then, the moment that sealed the deal. The ultimate mic drop. Holloway, desperate for a win, tried to throw a final punch. So, what's next? You're gonna say Hollywood should just make movies like the 80s again? Guns, explosions, tough guys who never lose? Stallone smirked. No, Martin. What I'm saying is, Hollywood should make movies people actually want to see. The room exploded. People jumped to their feet. The standing ovation lasted nearly a full minute. Holloway sat there, speechless, knowing he had lost for the second time. And Stallone? He simply stood up, shook Holloway's hand, and walked off the set like a champion. The aftermath, Hollywood's wake-up call the next day, the internet broke. Clips of Stallone's final remark flooded social media. The hashtag Hollywood Wake Up trended for days. Even studio executives couldn't ignore it anymore. A leaked email from a top film executive read, "Maybe we should stop ignoring the audience." Stallone isn't wrong. Within weeks, major studios started making changes. Action films with real stakes were greenlit. Directors who had been pushed aside for sticking to classic storytelling suddenly found their phones ringing again. And Sylvester Stallone? He went right back to work on The Last Warrior. 6 months later, the movie premiered, and it dominated the box office. Fans lined up for midnight showings. Critics who expected to hate it were shocked by how good it was. Hollywood had no choice but to acknowledge one thing. The audience had spoken, and they were done with Hollywood's nonsense. As for Martin Holloway, let's just say, his show didn't last much longer. The end. Or, as Stallone would say, it ain't over till it's over.